am I? I don't know. Slobby Robby, Slob Rob with no job. You know what I mean? Better known to the real IRS as Robert Hall. So, Slobby Robby as a moniker, I guess, so to speak. You know, they always say you can't give your own nicknames. You know, you don't self-gloss, right? So, I didn't come up with it, you know, at all. In fact, I was on a little social media app called MySpace, and my name on MySpace was Slobbert, right? Just because, like, what am I going to be, Robert? Like, hey, it's me, Robert from high school. You know, like, it's not really me, you know? So I was Slobbert. And then I was Slobbert Robert. And then I was Slob Rob, you know, and it was just different variations. And I hadn't really got that far. Then somebody posted a Garbage Pail Kid on my wall, right? So it was before anyone had, you know, a homepage or a grid. You had a wall on MySpace, right? And so someone posted a Slobby Robby, and it's a super, very, very, very obese person. And I'm like, cool, bro, fuck you too, dog. Like, but also cool. It rhymes and it's cool, right? And so I changed my MySpace name to Slobby Robby. I had a blast. My upbringing was super fun. That's the best way to put it. Very much indicative of the '80s. Very fun and bright and expressionistic and very full of things like roller skating, skateboarding, bike riding, mischief, TPing people's houses, egging people's houses, stealing hood ornaments and whatnot. You know, things that kids do. Besides being a fat kid, you know, I had a lot of things going for me. So, you know, just being a little bit slower, the last one to ollie, you know, the last one to ride a bike. Growing up in Tucson probably makes you pretty authentic, in my opinion, actually. I feel like that's one big difference between the kind of people that I know that I grew up with versus when I travel to places like LA, just as one example, where a lot of people are from different places but also have had to put on various fronts or masks or disguises. Whereas I think Tucson is a real place where it's hard to be a poser. It's hard to fake your way through it. And most people are from here and know who you are. And it's not the kind of place that you can just be a flipper, so to speak. You know, I think Tucson can be hard and rough and judgmental and all these things, but I think that's also indicative, very much so, of what we are as people, which is pretty real, pretty straightforward, and you know, we have the best accent. This is the accent that all the newscasters want to copy, right? Is the Tucson accent. So I think we have that going for us the most. Got into toys, you know, early on with Star Wars and Masters of the Universe and Thundercats and stuff like that. And toys were a big part of my life, actually. It sounds silly, but that was, you know, sort of like, you know, what gaming could be to a kid now, a big, big part of their life, you know. So every Friday, instead of getting an allowance, I just wanted to go toy shopping. So my dad would pick me up on Fridays and no other days. My dad would pick me up on Fridays, and I knew I had something in mind, whether it was G.I. Joe, Star Wars, you know, a specific vehicle, 2 specific figures, some WWF wrestling figures, whatever it was I had in mind. I knew what I was going to get. And every Friday when he picked me up, I had earned enough, you know, credit. He's heating up, Tony! Well, yeah. I guess the way I found out about the word vintage was through eBay. Selling sneakers, selling toys, also collecting, though. So I would get a pair of sneakers, and I was looking for a cool hat or a cool shirt to go with it. And so I would say Air Jordan shirt, right? Bo Jackson shirt, or stuff that was matching the shoes. You know, Nike was retroing all the stuff from the 80s when I was a kid. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to wear with this? You know, especially like early 2000s, it was all about like oversized, very matchy, like sort of Soldier Boy, you know? So I had the hats and the shoes, and I needed shirts a lot. So I'd go on eBay, and I'm noticing and people saying vintage Jordan shirt. I'm like, vintage? shit was like 12 years ago. You know what I mean? In my head, like that shit was just not that long ago for me. We're talking about vintage, right? I thought vintage was like an old hot rod or, you know, an antique furniture, you know? So once I realized that vintage was clothes of 20 years old or more, or whatever, however you want to classify it. I think eBay was classifying it as 20 years older. I learned a bunch of keywords on eBay because eBay's all about keywords as a seller and as a buyer. So I started doing vintage Nike shirt and then searching the cheap ones and realizing, oh, I'll buy this shit for $5, even though it's not my size, because that's crazy. That's the 1988. Like I started knowing, okay, cool. Then I started noticing, okay, well, this one was made in like 98 or 99. So that's a retro. That's the remake. That's the redo. You know, and I started really putting connecting a lot of these dots from, okay, so my childhood has now become lucrative because people that are my age have grown up and have real jobs. And all of a sudden my childhood is popular, more popular than ever somehow. You know, and this is me in the early 2000s realizing this. Not now, where it's gone like full-blown rap music, street artist, fucking mainstream, blew the fucking coop, you know what I mean? To where the shark is like almost jumped all the way to where it'll just be super normal again, right? So, yeah, I went from a keyword on eBay to a worldwide phenomenon of people just understanding that we don't have to buy brand new clothes, you know? So there was a lot in between, but I got into vintage, honestly, through shopping on eBay for myself because, you know, through selfish ways. You know, let's just say online commerce, period. Just realizing that, like, okay, I could have a day job, but I could go home at night and list some of this stuff on eBay. So I was working in a group home, and one of the guys that was the overnight staff said, hey, my aunt works at Paramount Pictures in LA, and they want to send us a bunch of stuff, right? So Paramount Pictures sent us this giant box of stuff. And there's like, you know, Don't Be a Menace shirts, you know, like spoof shirts. What's that? What's the one with the, where he's making fun of Eminem and it says, don't be hating. And it's, what the fuck is that called? It's really making fun of 8 Mile. It's a spoof of 8 Mile. Anyway, we got a bunch of promo stuff from Paramount Pictures, and at the bottom of the thing, there was a bunch of wooden Harry Potter wands from the first movie. And they're saying, oh, you can't give those to the kids. They're going to hit each other with them and show off. And they said, you guys can just take those, me and my co-staff. And we're like, okay. So we go on eBay, and sure enough, Harry Potter is a phenomenon, a worldwide phenomenon. I put them all on eBay before I go to Europe for the summer. I'm traveling, and some of this stuff is going up to $260. $280, $300. God forbid. I hate to think what they're worth now. I haven't even looked. But these classic, they're his wand. It's Harry's wand. It's a wooden one. It's very basic. It has the logo of the first movie kind of burned in it. That profit margin paid for my whole trip when I was in Europe. I was buying sneakers, eating out wherever I wanted. I was eating off eBay. Quiet money, passive money, what I call making money in your sleep. You know, that's what I try to tell people. Like I would wake up because we were on a different time zone. So I was waking up in Europe to money from the day before. Essentially, it's a day earlier in the U.S. and I was waking up to that money that next day in Europe. So it was pretty sick, and that was how I really started realizing that, you know, that having a job was kind of some bullshit, you know, compared to like doing something that I actually thought was kind of fun and that was actually quite lucrative even way back then when nobody even believed in online commerce. Nobody trusted it. Oh, do you really you order things online? Do you really get the stuff? Yeah, please tell me how often the stuff shows up. I'm like, every time, you know, like never once. I've been on eBay for 22 years, 23 years. Never once have I not had something show up, you know? So times have changed a lot, but back then, man, the getting was good. The getting was good on online selling back in the good old days.
I'm Blake Meisenheimer. I've been the manager at Generation Cool for 3 years now. So how I first met Robbie and Generation Cool, I was just hanging out with my homies, walking around 4th Ave. We saw cool-ass action figures, and then we just went in. I realized, oh, this is a vintage shop. And I already had like a little bit of knowledge about it, and just chatting up with him, talking about t-shirts, polo, Tommy Hilfiger, and the ball just kept on rolling. Yeah. one of the hardest things to deal with while working at Generation Cool would have to be like the disrespect people throw at us for the pricing, what types of items we have, and just generally not understanding vintage. People don't get why a band shirt or a movie shirt will be $200, but I mean, to each his own, I guess, right? The appeal of everything, I say it a lot, like there's a bit of everything in the shop. So you have like action figures, you have designer goods, you have NASCAR shirts, you have just basically anything cool vintage we have there. So I think going forward, we can like do more than other shops. Rob is like a sick boss because he always cares about my interests. He always checks in on me, make sure I'm doing good in my personal life. It's not always about business with him, which I really appreciate, because working at minimum wage jobs, like people think you're just like an NPC, like you're just a little bot, like, you know what I mean? So he treats me as a person. I love it.
You know, there's just so much advice and stuff like this out there. It's hard to not be repetitive, and I don't want to like, you know, sound like a broken record like to anybody, you know, and it's so hard to like digest all this like self-help and all these messages and this sort of Gary V mentality that's out there, which is fucking great. Like, he's not wrong. He's very much on point, and he's very much understanding energy and a lot of things. So I don't want to be just another talking head in that situation, but, you know, just understanding that what you want every day is all that really matters. I've done a lot of work on really trying to stay true to me and stay true to who I really think I am. So to try to project any other kind of like facade, it would be very difficult for me at this point. But it happens every day. And it wasn't hard. It wasn't difficult when I was younger, but you know, everyone, you know, sort of has this graduation of how they start sort of understanding themselves and their place in this world. And I would hope that young, old, middle-aged, any person can come to peace and clarity and come to a place where they realize that just existing and being themselves is probably good enough to be part of this society, and that we shouldn't, that we can hopefully evolve past, you know, worth being placed. You know, I drive a Mercedes because I actually like them. I think they're cool. I'm sure there's a big part of me that's been brainwashed, and, you know, it's still a status symbol, you know, and there's still these things that even somebody like me is affected every day. But we're not immune to all that, but we can at the same time. I definitely don't own one because someone else is going to see me driving it. At least I can look myself in the mirror and tell myself I'm doing it to make myself happy, you know, and that material possessions should not be a large part of that scape. They could be some part of it if it feels like a hobby, it feels like something positive. It's better than hurting people or gambling, or, you know, having hobbies and collecting stuff is okay. But focus on you, right? I remember early on when I started working with kids, and one of the David Bradley, who was a Arizona state representative actually in the Congress, he was the head of the company I was working for, and his speech at the beginning to all the new staff was, you know, you can't help other people, or you can't really, in a sense, make the world a better place until you're in that place yourself. So like, you can't work at a group home if you're like going to get triggered by like fighting or raising voices, or because, you know, you haven't worked that shit out for yourself. So how are you going to help out some kid who's been abused? And he, you know, you have to be right with yourself to be a real true cog in the wheel of the world and to be a functioning member. So I would say get right with yourself, understand exactly who you are, embrace the shit out of it, and realize that can take you to all the places you want to be.